In the heart of Hollywood, perched on a hill, stands a grand mansion that once belonged to the legendary actress Mae West. The house, known for its opulent design, now seems to carry the weight of its storied past. On quiet evenings, as the sun dips behind the hills, the mansion takes on an eerie air. The once lavish halls are now still, but if you listen closely, you might hear faint echoes from another time. Strange shadows flicker on the grand staircase, as if Mae herself is still making her dramatic entrance, her satin gown swishing as she descends. The shadows are almost lifelike, but they never seem to touch the floor, disappearing just before they're fully formed. The scent of Mae's favorite perfume, a mix of jasmine and rose, lingers in the air, particularly in the old sitting room where she used to host the most glamorous parties. Visitors who wander through sometimes report feeling as if they've just missed her, as if she might appear at any moment, offering a witty remark or a flirtatious smile. But it's the top floor that holds the most mysteries. In the quiet of the night, when the city is asleep, the faint sound of laughter drifts through the halls. Not just any laughter, but Mae's unmistakable, sultry giggle. Occasionally, visitors swear they hear snippets of her famous lines from the stage. Phrases like, "I used to be Snow White, but I drifted," or "You only live once, but if you do it right, once is enough." They seem to float from the air itself, carried by a breeze that sweeps through the empty rooms. No one knows for certain whether these events are merely the result of the mansion's age or if they are the lingering traces of Mae West herself, her spirit forever entwined with the place that once reflected her dazzling, larger-than-life persona. What is known, however, is that anyone who enters the Mae West house can't help but feel her presence, as though she's still watching, still laughing, still living in the echoes of her own history. As the years pass, the rumors surrounding Mae West's mansion grow. The house, now a relic of another era, attracts those with a particular curiosity, drawn by the whispers of her spirit still lingering in its walls. Some claim to have felt a sudden chill in the air, as though an invisible hand had brushed against their cheek. Others have experienced strange flashes of light, flickering in the corners of their vision, only to vanish when they turn to look directly at them. A few brave souls who have stayed overnight say that the laughter becomes more than just an occasional sound. It grows louder, echoing through the halls, as if Mae herself is amused by their presence, testing their nerves. Some of them even believe the laughter turns into a faint voice, calling their names, beckoning them toward the spiral staircase that leads to the top floor. On particularly still nights, when the city lights below twinkle like stars, there's an inexplicable feeling that time itself has bent. The air thickens with the energy of the past, and it's as though the boundaries between the present and the past blur. One might step into a room and, for a fleeting moment, find it restored to its former glory, the elegant furniture, the flicker of candlelight, and the scent of Mae's perfume hanging in the air. But when they blink, the room returns to its desolate, forgotten state. Curiously, no one has ever seen a portrait of Mae West in the house. The walls are lined with photographs of glamorous movie stars, but Mae's image is absent, as though she has removed herself from the memories of those who came after her. However, there's an old, dust-covered mirror in the hallway, a mirror that some claim reflects more than just their own image. Some say they have caught a glimpse of a shadowy figure standing behind them in the reflection, only to turn and find the hallway empty. As night falls, the strange happenings grow more frequent. The footsteps that echo through the halls are no longer soft and distant, but purposeful, as though someone is walking behind you, keeping pace. The air grows thick, heavy with the weight of her presence. And sometimes, just as you think you've heard the unmistakable rustle of her gown, a low, sultry voice fills the air, whispering in your ear, "Don't be shy, darling, come a little closer." But still, no one knows the full story of what happened in that mansion. Is Mae's spirit simply tied to the house? Or is she perhaps trying to tell something left unsaid? A secret buried within those walls that refuses to fade with time. And the one question everyone asks: why does she linger here, in this quiet, forgotten corner of Hollywood? What unfinished business keeps her bound to the house, her laughter forever echoing through its rooms, her perfume still intoxicating the air. Perhaps the answers lie in the dark, hidden beneath layers of dust and time, waiting for someone bold enough to uncover them. One night, a young woman named Evelyn, a writer with an insatiable thirst for mystery, decided to stay in the mansion. She had heard the rumors, of course, but she was determined to uncover the truth, to write the definitive story about Mae West and the secrets hidden in the old mansion. Armed with a notebook and a flashlight, she ventured inside as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the sprawling estate in deep shadows. The house felt different that evening. The usual quiet had given way to a subtle hum of energy, as if the mansion itself was alive, watching her with unseen eyes. As Evelyn explored the darkened rooms, she could sense something following her, an unseen presence. Her footsteps echoed louder than they should have, the silence between them too thick to be comfortable. Yet she pressed on, telling herself it was nothing more than her imagination running wild. She eventually found herself in the grand sitting room, the place where Mae West had once held court. The furniture was draped in sheets, but a faint, golden glow seemed to emanate from a portrait on the far wall, the only one of its kind in the house. Curiously, it was of Mae, but it was not like the glamorous images of her at the height of her fame. This portrait showed her in a more intimate, almost melancholic light. Her eyes seemed distant, as if she were lost in thought, contemplating something far beyond the frame. Evelyn approached it, her breath catching as she noticed something strange. The portrait's eyes, they followed her. She stepped back, but the gaze never wavered, lingering on her as if Mae were studying her, assessing her very soul. It was a feeling Evelyn couldn't shake, that Mae knew she was there, that Mae was aware of her presence in the house. Suddenly, the faint scent of jasmine and rose filled the air. It was stronger now, almost suffocating, and Evelyn could hear a soft rustling, like fabric brushing against the floor. The floorboards creaked as if someone were walking toward her. She turned, but there was no one there. But then, in the reflection of the mirror on the opposite wall, she saw it, the figure of a woman, dressed in a flowing gown, standing just behind her. Mae West, or rather her apparition, was watching her with a knowing smile. Her lips moved, though no sound came from her, as if she were whispering something just out of reach of Evelyn's ears. The ghostly figure gestured for Evelyn to follow, her finger pointing toward the staircase that led to the top floor. For reasons she couldn't explain, Evelyn felt compelled to obey. She made her way toward the stairs, the air growing colder with each step. As she ascended, the faint sound of laughter echoed from the upper floors, but this time, it was not the playful laughter of the Mae West everyone knew. It was deeper, tinged with sorrow and something else, something darker. On the top floor, the atmosphere thickened. The doors to the master bedroom stood ajar, as if inviting her inside. Evelyn pushed the door open slowly, her heart pounding in her chest. The room was dimly lit, the curtains swaying as if caught in an unseen breeze. In the center of the room stood a large, ornate mirror, but this one was different. The glass shimmered with a strange, unnatural light, and as Evelyn stepped closer, she could feel a pull, a magnetic force drawing her in. Suddenly, Mae's voice broke through the silence. "It's been a long time, darling. Don't be afraid." Evelyn froze. The mirror seemed to pulse, and in its reflection, she saw Mae standing behind her, closer than before. This time, her smile wasn't comforting. It was knowing, and something about the way Mae looked at her made Evelyn feel as if she were being pulled into a memory, into a moment long lost in time. The reflection began to shift, showing images from Mae's past, flashes of her performing on stage, laughing with famous friends, and then, unexpectedly, scenes that seemed darker, more private. Mae's face twisted with an expression of anguish as the images grew more chaotic. The mansion, it seemed, was not just haunted by Mae's presence. There were other shadows, other forces lurking in the periphery of the mirror. The air became dense, almost suffocating, as the laughter Evelyn had heard before grew louder, reverberating off the walls. But it wasn't just Mae's laughter anymore. It was accompanied by voices, other voices, faint whispers that seemed to come from all around her. Words in languages she didn't understand, phrases that felt like they were meant to be forgotten. Evelyn reached out, her hand trembling, to touch the mirror, and as her fingers made contact, the surface rippled like water, pulling her in. The last thing she saw before the room went completely dark was Mae West's face, her eyes wide and filled with something far beyond mischief. It was a warning, a plea, and then everything was still. Don't forget to subscribe and like if you liked this story. When Evelyn awoke, she was no longer standing before the mirror, nor was she in the master bedroom. The room around her was unfamiliar, darker than any space in the mansion, yet somehow more alive. The air was thick with the scent of jasmine and rose, and the faint sound of laughter echoed faintly through the walls, as though coming from far away. The room was cold, colder than it had been before she'd touched the mirror. Her breath misted in the air as she slowly sat up, trying to orient herself. She glanced around and realized she was in a narrow hallway, the walls lined with old portraits of Mae West in various stages of her career. But these weren't the glamorous Hollywood photos Evelyn had seen before. These images were more haunting, their expressions tense, their eyes hollow. The colors in the paintings seemed to shift under her gaze, as if the figures were subtly changing, their faces contorting into something unrecognizable. Evelyn felt a strange chill run down her spine. The hallway was longer than she remembered, stretching further into the house, the edges of the shadows seemingly too deep to be natural. And as she stood, a soft, almost imperceptible hum reverberated through the walls, vibrating in the bones of the house itself. The vibration seemed to draw her forward, urging her to follow the path ahead. But then, Mae's voice whispered from the shadows. "Not yet, darling. There's more to see." The words sent a shiver through Evelyn, but there was something else. Something in Mae's tone that felt like both a command and an invitation. Before she could decide whether to flee or stay, the hallway stretched even further, the door at the end of it opening slightly, revealing a dim, flickering light. Unable to resist, Evelyn walked down the hall, her steps slow, deliberate. The closer she got to the door, the more she felt like the house was alive, as if it were breathing, shifting around her. She could almost hear the walls groaning, as though they were waking up from a long, heavy sleep. When she reached the door, her hand hovered over the handle, but just before she could touch it, she felt a gust of air blow past her, sending a faint whisper of words through her mind. "The truth will change you." The voice was not Mae's this time. It was darker, more sinister, as if warning her of something beyond her understanding. But before she could second-guess herself, Evelyn swung open the door. Inside, the light flickered, casting strange shadows against the walls. The room was larger than the others, filled with heavy, antique furniture draped in sheets, as though it had been abandoned for decades. Yet in the center of the room stood an ornate, gilded chair, its back facing her. The chair looked almost regal, as if waiting for someone to sit in it. A low hum, the same hum that had filled the hallway, seemed to emanate from it, and as Evelyn stepped closer, she could see something strange reflected in the ornate mirror hanging above the chair. It wasn't her reflection that stared back at her. It was Mae West, but different. Her face was gaunt, her eyes wide and filled with an unsettling emptiness. The image in the mirror moved, not in sync with Evelyn, but as if it existed in a world of its own. Mae's reflection reached out, her lips parting as if to speak, but the words that emerged weren't clear. The sound was distorted, like a broken recording, but Evelyn could make out the syllables. "Come closer. Listen. The truth. It's inside." Without thinking, her feet carried her toward the chair. The closer she got, the stronger the pull became, and she found herself seated in the chair, the weight of its cold, gilded frame pressing against her skin. The room seemed to shrink, the walls narrowing until they almost closed in on her, the hum growing louder, vibrating through her bones. Then, Mae's voice, clear this time, but chillingly different, echoed from the shadows. "Do you want to know the truth, darling?" The voice was close, so close she could feel it against her ear. "Are you ready for what you'll find?" Before Evelyn could respond, the room seemed to tilt, and the walls rippled like the surface of water. The ground beneath her feet seemed to dissolve, and she was suddenly plunged into darkness. But it wasn't a void. It was something else, something vast. She could feel an ancient presence around her, something long forgotten and buried deep within the house. A voice, familiar and yet alien, echoed in the space around her. I was never just a star, Evelyn. I was part of something bigger, a force you cannot comprehend. And you've been chosen to see it. The darkness grew thicker, suffocating her. Yet she could still sense something waiting for her, something just out of reach. The laughter, now distant but still present, mixed with other sounds, whispers, chants, something dark and primal. Evelyn reached out into the blackness, her fingers brushing against something cold and hard, something ancient. Then, as if the universe itself had answered, the light returned, but it was not the flickering glow of the mansion. It was a piercing, harsh light that forced Evelyn to squint. And when she opened her eyes, she was no longer in the mansion at all. She was somewhere else, somewhere that didn't belong to time. In front of her was Mae West, not the image from the mirror, not the haunting reflection, but the woman herself. She was standing, looking at Evelyn with the same knowing smile. Only this time her eyes weren't empty. They were full of a deep, unsettling truth. Welcome, Evelyn. You've entered the truth. And now you can never leave. The world around Evelyn was no longer the familiar walls of Mae West's mansion, but something altogether more surreal. The harsh light that enveloped her flickered, casting long, unnatural shadows that stretched impossibly far. She felt weightless, suspended between time and space, as though she was caught in some sort of liminal realm, a place that existed between the past and the present, between life and death. Mae stood before her, her figure now radiating a strange, magnetic energy. The smile on her lips was no longer warm or inviting, but knowing, the kind of smile one might wear when holding a secret far too large to share. Her eyes, once distant, now bore into Evelyn's with an intensity that made her heart race. You've come here seeking answers, darling, Mae's voice purred, but there was something more to it now. It was not the playful, teasing voice Evelyn had expected, but something deeper, more commanding. But answers come at a price. You've touched the truth, and now you must face it. Evelyn tried to speak, but no words came out. She felt her throat tighten, as if the very air around her was choking her voice. The laughter that had once seemed playful now echoed through the void, growing louder and louder, as if the entire world was laughing at her, or perhaps with her. She could not tell. I was never just a star, Mae continued, her gaze unwavering. I was part of something ancient, something bigger than any of them knew. The mansion, it's not just a house. It's a doorway. She stepped closer, and Evelyn could feel the energy radiating off her, as if Mae herself were made of some unseen force. I was never meant to be just a performer. The glamour, the fame, it was just the surface. The truth, Evelyn, is that I was bound to this place. And so are you now. The room seemed to warp around them, the edges of the space bending and twisting. Evelyn's heart pounded in her chest as she tried to make sense of the words, but it was as if her mind could not keep up. She wanted to turn away, to escape, but her body wouldn't respond. She was frozen in place. Mae's voice dropped lower, more sinister now. This place, this house, it was built on secrets, on power. I didn't just entertain the world. I kept something locked away, something that the world was never meant to see. And when you touched the mirror, Evelyn, when you stepped into this truth, you unlocked it. The air around them crackled, and Evelyn felt a sudden jolt of electricity surge through her body, her senses overloaded. For the first time, she could see it, the source of the power Mae spoke of. It was not just in the house. It was in the very fabric of time and space itself, woven into the mansion's walls, into Mae's presence. Something ancient, something dark, had been kept hidden, and now it was awake. The room began to twist violently, spinning faster and faster until Evelyn felt as though she were falling, spiraling into nothingness. The walls stretched and contorted, bending and warping until they no longer looked like a room at all. She could hear Mae's laughter now, a cruel, echoing sound that reverberated through the vast, twisting abyss. You wanted the truth, Evelyn? Mae's voice echoed, louder and louder, as if it were all around her. You wanted to know what was hidden? Well, now you see it. You're a part of it, just as I was. Suddenly, everything stopped. Evelyn was no longer falling. She was standing in front of the gilded chair in the mansion, the very one she had sat in earlier. The room was back to its dark, decaying state. The air was still, heavy with the scent of jasmine and rose, but the weight of the truth lingered in the room, suffocating her. The mirror above the chair glimmered, its surface reflecting not just her own face, but Mae's, only now Mae was not smiling. Her expression was cold, unblinking, as if she had become part of the house, part of the very force that had taken hold of Evelyn. Mae's eyes locked with hers, and Evelyn felt a wave of recognition, of understanding. It's too late now, Mae whispered, her voice no longer just a sound, but a feeling that gripped Evelyn's heart. You can never leave this place, Evelyn. You've become part of the mansion's history, part of the story it tells. And now, just as I did, you'll remain here, forever trapped between the walls of truth and illusion. Evelyn's breath quickened as she realized what Mae meant. The mansion wasn't just a house. It was a prison for those who sought the truth, a place where the souls of the curious were bound, forever caught in the twisted, eternal story of Mae West, a story that was no longer hers to tell, but hers to keep. And with that, the mirror cracked, splintering into 1,000 shards that reflected the haunted image of Mae West, and the endless laughter filled the space, echoing through the mansion and beyond. Evelyn was no longer a visitor. She was part of the house's dark legacy, a new chapter in the eternal story,